Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-affleck.
And it's time for
0001111111111 UnSpun.
Love the numbers.
It's digital, it's digi UnSpun. It's 111 today, our 111th episode. So I don't know. That's
Who would have known that when we look back, 2 years, George, of UnSpun podcasts. Remember when we stood outside on the Curve Communications fire escape in the back, and Amanda, your wife, took a quick shot on her phone, and that was like the cover of our podcast? Like, okay.
I know, but we came up with our format too quite early on, and we have really kind of stuck to it because we had that big debate about should we have guests, what should we do, how do we structure this, and all that stuff. And it's been it's certainly, once you get that structure, for anybody who's thinking about podcasting, and podcasting is obviously growing like crazy. I saw that a few companies being gobbled up by the big guys. Spotify bought a bunch. It's once you figure out your process, it's really quite fun and fairly straightforward to do. You just got to follow the plan, and that was the hardest part, was us coming up with what's our structure for this. And I think it's kind of fun.
And our structure is, let's just be ourselves and talk about stuff and really take the politics out of it and try and figure out what's actually going on behind the scenes. And I love it. And both of us are now writing columns. We finally got you writing columns. Thank goodness, because they are consistently so on point. And this week is no different. But before we get to the impetus behind your column, you were telling me in our little pre-meeting about a story that I have no idea about. Somebody dumped their garbage at City Hall?
Yeah, yesterday it was in the Vancouver Sun. A resident of Strathcona, so upset. He's a dad of a couple of kids. So upset with the lack of anything going on in Strathcona. The fact that crime in the neighborhood's gotten so bad. Obviously, Strathcona Park is a mess. There's obviously the challenge of the homelessness stuff, and so he took it upon himself. And the neighborhood has been quite aggressive. I think for sure. We know that they've been really quite a few of the neighbors are very vocal, but he went down there, filled up a trailer full of garbage, and took it to City Hall and dumped it in front of City Hall, and to send a message. And so that's a pretty clear message. It was a bunch of furniture and odds and ends of just stuff lying around in the park that either was, where it came from, God knows, but it was a lot of stuff that he managed to pick up really quickly and dump off at City Hall to say, hello, what's going on here? Help me out here. Help the neighborhood out.
They're lucky that somebody didn't tow a decrepit camper and drop it off in the front of City Hall. I mean,
yes. Well, that was kind of because that was a story a couple of weeks ago, and it led me to kind of think about garbage. And this is something, it's always a complicated issue to talk about in a way, because on the one hand, people, you don't want to be offensive to, I'm not talking about being cruel to people. And I think that the fact that this thing was dumped off, it might be somebody's home. I might have offended somebody, this trailer, but the fact that they were able to do it, and it was only because that it got media's attention, and John Cooper really made an issue of it, that they took it away. And I'm thinking, how could it have even lasted that long? How could somebody drive with a tow truck and dump a trailer, living in it or not, into a city park? And then you sort of just look around the city and you see what's going on, and you walk down Granville Street, you walk down Gastown. My daughter works in Gastown, and she read my piece in Vancouver's Awesome, and she said, yeah, it's really bad, Dad. And she's 24 years old, works at a shoe store down there. She says, really bad. I go home when I leave work. And, I don't think she and I align politically, to be honest. I don't know if she's voted for me, but, she won't tell me. But in the past,
I like that about her.
Both my kids, all three of my youngest is too young to vote, but I think he's probably my biggest supporter for politically. But she said, I have to dodge human feces on the sidewalks throughout Gastown. And so, you look across the city, and so my op-ed is really about, I get the sense that people assume that the city is going to take care of this. And I refer to Japan, where they have schooling and you're taught how to remove, your responsibility.
Clean up after yourself.
Clean up after yourself. And, there is this on the city website, they talk about this, but it's just not happening. And I know that the budget for street cleaning in the city and the budget for park board has been seriously deficient for many, many years. Partly from cutbacks in 2008 when the market crashed and the city looked at cuts. And one of the areas they cut significantly was street cleaning. It's kind of gotten back up to it, but as a proportion of the budget, it's just not even close to what it should be for a city our size. And with the assumption that, I'm sorry, people just aren't always going to pick up after themselves. And so we have to make that assumption. And, I look at my strata as an example. We have a process. We have 300 units in our building, and people leave their garbage. So they just, they do. So we've set up a system where you get your castaway, your junk you don't want, you're not going to remove it. Instead of like hiding it in stairwells or wherever, which is what they were doing, we've kind of designated an area and just say, okay, just put your junk there. It costs us like $1,500 every 2 months to remove all this junk. Yeah. But it's better than having to walk through our building and find garbage here, a bag of this here, an old shelving unit on the stairwell. I mean, it's like, okay, the society's just not up to the level that we'd like them to be able to do this in our building. Yeah. But so we budgeted in. We have the expectation, and nobody's ever complained about this line item in our budget. And I think it's because we go, you know what? It's good. It's a good thing to do. Keeps our home tidy. It's responsible. It stops the collection of junk in other areas. So let's just do it. And I think the city just. And I point out that the budget for the city, just for everybody's perspective, has gone from $800 million in 2008 to $1.6 billion. So the question, are you getting twice as much service from the city, especially related to cleaning and keeping the sidewalks and everything clean as you did in 2008?
No.
Exactly.
A couple things I want to jump on here because I love your column, because I lived in Ontario for 9, right? So in Ontario, you can put the things you don't want out on your street, on your corner. Even if you live in an apartment, you can leave it on the street corner. And if it's not gone by the next day's garbage pickup, it goes in the garbage. The garbage trucks pick it up. It's not even an extra expense. It is, instead of having... But yeah, it's built in. Instead of having, at the end of the lane, at the end of the street, that's got the spot up against the fence that inevitably gets a couch or a chair or a bed. Or I can't tell you how many times I've called 1-800-GOT-JUNK because I want my neighborhood to be safe. And in the middle of summer, those things that pile up are a fire hazard. They're a hazard. I'm really sad that people have taken to littering to the degree and dumping to the degree that they are now, that we need city signs, no dumping. Like, really? Okay. How about we just pick that up? But how about we just pick that up? How about, as the city, like you say, how about we just, somewhere in that massive bloated ballooning budget, we actually seriously take care of this? Because I got to give the city props on the one thing when I'm reporting the overflowing garbage can in my neighborhood, or if I walk by it, I snap it, I send it to the city. It's often immediately fixed. But it's like, where there is a garbage can that is constantly overflowing, could we maybe put 2? Or could we maybe pick up more often there, or whatever is needed? So I am right there with you. I remember a time where Vancouver was as pristine as a city could be, and it's not now. Mm-hmm. It's not,
and it's doubly worse because of COVID. True. And perhaps, the streets are less filled with people, and there's this other stuff going on that we're all aware of. But still, I think that this unpredictable way of the garbage problem, as unpredictable as it kind of seems, it isn't. It is predictable. We know the areas that are worse. There is technology that can track this kind of stuff. They can be strategic with their staffing and how they put them and how they distribute their staff teams and
deployment
and more staff. Hey, for unions, this is a good thing. They're relying more on. They increased the budget of the street cleaning crew. This volunteer, sort of this organization that it pays for street people to clean. It's like it's a nonprofit thing, and the city gives them a bunch of money for guys to go around and clean the street. Yeah. That's great, but that is not, to me. I mean, it's great that we're doing that, and good on this nonprofit and helping these people, lifting them up, fantastic. But at the end of the day, in my mind, city staff needs to, and there needs to be a strategy that's built in within the operating budget that pays for legitimate street cleaning systems that are above and beyond what's happening. This isn't a criticism of the teams that are in place. Yep. This is by priority by city councils over the many years now that have not prioritized. They boosted the budget a bit. I think Sarah Kirby-Young put a motion forward. They've boosted the budgets here and there, but not even close to what it needs to be. And I think that people are starting to get really angry about this, and it becomes a metaphor for management of our city and how people and how it's operated, and garbage in, garbage out. So
So let's
here
go
we
back. Let's
are.
go back to the Strathcona resident who dumped the garbage at City Hall, and get on to Strathcona a little bit. I had the opportunity to speak with David Eby. I've been filling in for Linda Steele on CKNW this week, and I was speaking with Attorney General and BC's Housing Minister,
Mhm.
David Eby. Interesting how that uh, particular politician gets some really epically difficult files. Like it just feels like Mr. Eby is always sort of sitting with the biggest of files in front of him. And certainly what he's seeing with Strathcona, where we've seen the park board fail, and Vancouver City Hall. I mean, I think perhaps the mayor's still writing letters to somebody. I don't know. But David Eby answered my questions in ways that I actually felt there was some meat on the bone. And yeah, he's saying this isn't going to get resolved even remotely until the end of April, which is concerning given the fact it's been
Mhm.
going on. How long, George? How long have we been talking about Strathcona here? But he
Well,
actually
parks.
had, right, unlike the Jericho hostel, which the second we heard about that, we're thinking a hostel in the middle of nowhere with no transit, no supports of any kind, not a
There's
drugstore, not a
no
grocery
logic.
store, nothing. If you're down there
You
with it
tweeted that because you asked a question about how did that even become a thing? Like, what? It wasn't in the original staff report. We learned it became added, and because we both were like,
on the
"What? This
floor,
makes no
right?
sense."
It
By
was
whom?
Counselor Boyle.
So she threw it on there with no, like, that is just 100% political. Like, and
That
I'm
to me
pretty sure
is
she was
like
raised in the west side of
watch
Vancouver.
the
So,
NIMBYs go crazy in Jericho. That's what
yeah,
it
it's like
reads to me. It's like,
100%.
but it's not about that. It's about how does anybody thrive who needs the services of the downtown east side in Jericho? Like they're just, anyways, I'm glad to hear that
That
that's
said,
no longer a thing.
I do support, even if in her mind she was going, we need to spread this horribleness, this pain, these services across the city, and we did do
Sure.
that way back. The MPA way back up in Dunbar put a facility, and I've talked about this in the past. This building at the corner of King 16th and Elm or
Dunbar.
Dunbar.
Yeah.
And and people were outraged at the time. It's going to create chaos. Some people are still mad, but it didn't create the chaos. And so you can create facilities across our city, but you need to have a strategy, and it has to be planned, and you have to have the
Yes.
proper infrastructure and
So let me
medical
get to what
conditions,
David Eby
all that
said
stuff.
on that front. And that's what I like about what David Eby said, because I was expecting we're going to put them in hotels, and the people that are in Strathcona Park that are looking for housing, we're going to decamp and have spaces for them, and it will be hotels and temporary and blah blah blah. No, that's not what he said. He said we've got two. They've identified two. I'm paraphrasing. Warehouse type properties, spaces which would offer shelter that they would then use as assessment centers. In the meantime, multiple modular housing setups are being erected. He actually almost
Across the
sort of
region, I hope,
across the region. Yeah,
not
but
just
he's
Vancouver.
but they've identified a couple of spots to start with for the people that are in Strathcona Park that are fairly downtown core orientated, that are on pieces of property. And he said that, these temporary modular housing, and he kind of said, I hate to oversimplify it, but they're kind of like Lego. So we're creating these little micro communities, but it's important that the micro communities don't end up being mini war zones, which is what we've seen in the past. What's the one on West 2nd Avenue? There's the
Marguerite Ford building,
right.
yes, named after former NPA city councilor. Yeah, it's yeah, that one is a bit of a mess. It's a seniors home and a core need development for people who are homeless or just getting them off the street, and it's not working.
No.
And if you live in Olympic Village, a lot of the problems that stem from Olympic Village are coming through that building. And of course, seniors there, when I was in office, would complain. They felt they were worried about their safety.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have everybody living together, and this goes, the whole argument about pour doors and all that stuff. And it's an interesting debate about separate entrances. And well, it's not just we need to think about these individuals as EB says, is like everybody has different needs and different housing needs, different human needs, and so
And
you have to
interaction, right?
identify those.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
want that to be a little microcosm of a community and supports within that, not at odds with one another. And that begins, and it really felt to me like Minister Eby was beginning to address what you've said literally for 110 podcasts with me, if not more, radio appearances of the 4 pillars. Like, because I keep saying, where's the first brick, guys? I'm so sick of the 4 pillars being our only way to fix it, and nobody's laying brick number 1. Pick one. And he said, it's going to start with assessment and figuring out the needs of the people so that we can create the wraparound so that when we do place, that's why it's end of April and not the end of February, is how to get to there so that it is ready. And he talked about, actually, Minister Eby, spoke about Victoria and Nanaimo as well, and how shortcuts were taken to try and decamp a scenario and then create, these mini communities in hotels that the government had said that they were setting up and ready to wrap around, and they weren't ready to wrap around, and they were not good at all, and there were no supports, and all it did was clear the street out, and then another encampment eventually, as you always say, pops up. And he says he has a plan for that as well. More bylaw officers, having enforcement be key for police officers and bylaw officers to clear parks. He's like, we're gonna, but we have to have a place for them to go. So there has to be a meaningful movement, which brings us back to those who aren't at all looking for a place to go, the people that are activists or honestly, criminals. You took the word right out.
As we learned in the last few weeks about what was going on there, some horrible stuff, and we have a person who's accused of murder now. It's in. So, I mean,
brutal. You called it though. You called that. You're like, when it's going to take somebody dying, and it did, George. It did.
I know it's still there though. The park's still got a bunch of tents in it, and it's interesting. I wonder though the provincial government strategy when you talk about what he said, because one of the challenges with the downtown east side is all these service providers, and they're all competing with each other, and they're all like they're and sometimes in a bad way where you're not actually focused on the job at hand, you're focused on your own territory or whatever, and you're not solving the problem. It's been a forever problem as far as I know, and certainly when I was on council, there was a strategy with the provincial government to try and find a way to streamline things and get them working together more. And so maybe what he's looking at when he talks about this kind of, you have to, what they're going to be accused of is warehousing. I guarantee you that word's going to come up, and that the activists are going to accuse the province of warehousing people and putting them through this, whatever
assessment.
But you have to, when you have all these people competing over here, who many of them are doing great work, absolutely, but how do we take 200 people or 50 people or 10 people? We don't even really know how many people are truly in Strathcona. And what are their needs and how do we solve those needs? And each one of them might have a different need, but you can't just throw them over to Hastings. There you go. There's 12 different organizations. Go see them. Well, here's a list.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't work.
And Minister Eby actually referenced the fact that, in Strathcona Park, because I just drove by it last weekend, as I pointed out off the top, and you can see where the west side of the park has been cleared for getting it back to park. What do they call it? Remuneration. That they moved.
Still waiting for Oppenheimer to open, by the way.
I know. I knew that was coming. But they asked, or they mandated a move of those on the west side over to the east side, or the option of being housed. And Minister Eby did say that an encouraging number of people wanted and took the housing that was offered in exchange for removing those tents on the west side of Strathcona. I want to talk about another park too, because nothing gets me fired up like.
Oh, here we go. Lord Stanley. Lord Stanley's park are you referring to, my dear?
It is as clockwork as cherry blossoms.
Why do you hate bikes so much?
I
don't
have
hate
bikes in my 3-person family. I have 3 conventional bikes and 2 e-bikes. I love to bike.
Clearly you hate bikes. Clearly John Cooper hates bikes. Clearly anybody who says that they want cars to drive through Stanley Park must hate bikes.
Must hate bikes. You know what I suggested? Did you hear what I suggested? I think that we should, because the cyclists, they feel in danger when they ride around Stanley Park. They feel like they're in danger, so they need their own bike lane, because cars, they'll kill them. And you know how many accidents there's been in there with cyclists and cars. Like, wow. If one more hub aggressive tweeter does checks notes and then starts tweeting at me again, please, show me the statistics of how dangerous it is to be a cyclist in Stanley Park. And so my suggestion was, let's make everybody drive. Right now it's 30 kilometers an hour for cars, right? But cyclists can go as fast as they want. I say, let's knock it down to 20 kilometers an hour for everybody and no separated bike lane. And
What
we can
about the
get some
guys in their tighty
I know that
little
they're using it
Speedos
like
or whatever they were riding?
an Olympic oval. Come
Uh-huh.
on. I'm so mad about this.
You're gonna get Peter Ladner all hot up. What are you?
He can have at her. I blocked him a long time ago. I actually use these threads on Twitter now to just know to block people because they come at you, and I'm like, listen, it's about seniors and people with disabilities, and y'all are going to be
Not
both at some
everyone.
point,
It's
right?
everyone's park.
It's everyone's
Come
park.
on. It's, buses, cars, bicycles, pedestrians. We've talked about this last year, and this is probably going to pass. This,
it's going to.
Unless they're wondering, this is a motion coming forward without any research to reclose all the streets by Camille, the chair. I think he's the chair, isn't he?
He is.
Camille, whatever. Dumont.
Yeah, I invited him to come on the show. He said he was too busy. He's going to go on next Monday.
So this is probably going to be, anyways. So we've talked. He's 13 now, but he's not the most physically active kid in the world, but he does like riding a bike. And we live downtown. And guess what bike route we like to do a lot in the summer? We like to ride around the seawall leisurely with our kids, friends. It's a beautiful tourist when they would come, our friends from England or whatever. They would come. The first thing we'd always do, rent bikes, go along the seawall.
Of course.
And sometimes you have to get off because it gets too busy. But you kind of want to do that lower route because guess what? It's nice and level and easy for all ages. All ages. And one of the ironic arguments I find with this whole issue is that, Hub and all these cycling advocates all talk about that we need to build bike lanes for all ages. Well, that bike lane around that they want and they close the one on is not all ages. You can't ride up that hill.
No,
I can't.
But they don't want to have to. They don't want to have to unclip to go around that one little corner on the seawall. You have to actually unclip. Oh, and you can't go 50.
Ride on the road. They can ride on the road.
I know. We can go round and round and round, but suffice to say that we have not heard the end of what's happening at Stanley Park. I just wonder if this time, the day that the motion is tabled, the next morning, those big orange pylons will arrive at 6 a.m. like they did the last time we had public consultation on this. It's such garbage.
I want to know how much those pylons are costing again. Please, thank you.
Please and thank you. Budget line item. Got a note that John Cooper is also putting a motion forward to protect the view cones from Queen Elizabeth Park. And I don't know much about view cones. You know much more about this than I do. I question whether buildings require view cones and neighborhoods require view cones, but I would argue that Queen Elizabeth Park should have its view cone.
Yeah, I think this comes through the Broadway plan. There's some concerns he has related to some of the height.
Correct.
I don't know, you hate towers, so.
I don't hate towers, you big lug.
I'm kidding.
Man. Oh, let's get to this next topic because we know that you hate Dr. Henry.
I don't hate Dr.
Exactly.
I always have said that journalists need to be asking tougher questions, and I think that's still a thing that she may be winning this battle of who's the best medical. I don't know. There's like stats, and I see this stuff on Twitter, and people say, "Oh, we're the best. No, we're the best. And we're the best. No, Alberta, BC." It's like, oh my god. It's like, who cares? Just
nobody cares. Let's get the vaccine. Yeah, let's get the vaccine. So vaccine rollout. We're long on topics and short on time, George. So vaccine rollout. The debate now is we're first and foremost this coming Monday, depending when you're watching it, this coming Monday. So what is the date today? It's the 25th. So this coming Monday is when the announcement will be made as to how the 80 plus segment of our population will be vaccinated. That's when the plan, or perhaps that's when registration will begin. Who knows when vaccine will start to go into arms? We don't know, but Monday's the day that everybody's circled on the calendar. Now sparking the conversation that perhaps the 80 plus set should wait a little bit. And essential workers like the frontline workers at the grocery store and bus drivers and teachers should get their vaccinations prior to the 80 plus set. Your thoughts?
Okay, I have 2 points on this. One is 100% no until we get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So because that one is not as good, but it's one shot, and I say give that one to the younger crowd.
Right.
And take the bottom level and take that. To me, the whole point of this vaccine is to protect the most vulnerable. And yes, there are people who work, frontline workers, grocery store workers, teachers, who might be vulnerable, but they should fit into those vulnerable categories, whether it be age or health issues, whatever it might be. But generally, the policy that we're seeing in most countries is age down, 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 down. England's following this 5 year, 5 year, 5 year. US has done a more, in most, it's just like free for all, because they believe that their philosophy is just the people who are more likely to be aggressive about getting the vaccine are probably the ones that were probably being more cavalier about not wearing masks and partying and stuff. And they're the ones who are spreading this thing. So, we talked about this last week. You live a bit more of a restrained life than I do as far as this past year. And but I follow the rules, but I certainly have not been as protected as perhaps you have been because of your dad.
You don't have someone in long-term care that you're essential with.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have the risk of my dad, I would have not been as strict. Perhaps I would have been more like you. I would have been following the orders, but not following them to the degree that I could tell you on one hand the number of people that I had been in contact with in a week, right? And all of them are in my house.
To me, it's almost like it's the whole argument over this thing at this stage is a moot point because the new vaccines are coming fast and furious. Right. And I think a good policy should be based on the success of the vaccine. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which looks like it's 65%, efficacy. On average, potentially efficacy, or maybe 95. It's kind of confusing.
Well, it's going to stop you from dying. That's what they're saying. Like it's going to stop you from getting severe disease or dying. You might get COVID-19. You might get sick.
I will happily take the Johnson & Johnson at 56 years old. That's fine. I'll take it, and because if I get it, I probably, I could die, but I want, Amanda's mom who's 75 to get it ASAP. It's because also it's like making it really challenging for us to live our lives because we have to be so careful because of her, as you have been with your dad, even more so. But, she lives an independent life, and as do so many 75-year-olds. But those of us who are family, kids, grandkids, some haven't seen their grandma in a year. I mean, it's because they're so afraid of giving them this virus, and so,
they should be, quite frankly. But that's just it. Like this is where we are. So okay, when it comes to my dad, let's say, and this is good news for people who are worried about vaccine rollouts, because I can just tell you what I've seen, and at Dad's care home, everybody there has been vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. He was contacted, or we were contacted on his behalf, so that he could be vaccinated literally on the 42nd day of the wait. Like somebody's paying attention, guys. Like, well, every headline's like, too long, how long, not enough, oh my God, 1 shot, 2 shots, da-da-da. You know what? They made sure that he got the first one, and then they made sure that he got the second one in exactly the fashion that he was supposed to. And I was just pleased, as somebody who was asked to be a part of the firewall at his care home. As you well know, I did not expect to get that call back in early January. When I was asked if I would do it, I said yes. As everybody who gets called from a health authority for your opportunity to get vaccinated, say yes. Take the shot. So I was contacted.
There's a reason
they're the professionals.
They're the ones who are telling you this is the process we're following. Please follow it.
So when they do, it's as easy as a text message with a link to a website and a password, and it opens up and you click on the appointment you want. I chose the drive-through one. It was kind of like going through the Peace Arch border crossing at a non-busy time of day because I came in my window. I had a 10:10 window, and I think like it was really, getting a shot through a window in your car is kind of weird. It hurts a lot more because they're like trying to do it. But you have to wait on the other side for 15 minutes, which is an interesting piece of this. Like it's not as easy to just churn people through when people are like, why is it taking so long?
That's a standard flu shot. You do that too. You go get a flu shot, you're supposed to wait in the pharmacy for 15 minutes.
Absolutely. And it's exactly the same questionnaire. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, because I've now lived it for me, who has no underlying health issues at all, but I'm a 53-year-old woman and I had 0 side effects from either of the shots. There are a lot of rumors going around that the second shot's really bad. And the nurse said, it's exactly the same shot you got before. It's just another dose of it. And here we go. So now the question, my stepdad's so funny. He has not received his shot yet. He's in the over 80 cancer survivor, as is my mother, over 80 cancer survivor. They're waiting, I'm caring for them as well. And they're already like, when I get my shot, do I get a passport? So,
yes, you're calling this week.
Oh boy.
It's an interesting, definitely read it. It's, talk about this whole passport issue. And I thought, I think I saw a tweet to you from Jen, who's one of our fans and a friend of mine, actually. And she said she remembers, and I remember this too, that we used to when you went traveling to certainly Asia, and I remember going to India, or not India, to Egypt. Anyways, you had to get your whatever shots you had to get.
Typhoid
Diphtheria,
and cholera.
typhoid and
Typhoid and cholera when I
cholera.
went to Yugoslavia in
Yeah.
1975. Yep.
And you had to take a little thing that proved you had these shots. But your argument is this is this a question of freedom of liberty and of our private information?
Well, some want the freedom immediately. It's like, why wouldn't we? And the argument there is, and then it's the haves and have-nots. Some people got the shot, others didn't. Some have freedom, others don't. In Israel, they are absolutely implementing a green passport, which is fascinating. But the human rights side of it is nobody's free unless everybody's free. So the middle that I found is basically by the time everybody in BC, certainly everyone in Canada, but certainly everyone in BC, once everybody's had the opportunity to get the shot, and like everybody, and if you decide not to at that point, you're on your own. Everybody has had the opportunity to get the shot. Everybody should get an immunity card or a passport that proves that they did, so that they can then use that as proof. But I don't think that should be, I don't think things should open up for only a portion of society prior to everybody having the opportunity and access to it.
And
that's kind of my
the
middle.
whole kid issue, under 18 don't get the shot. So for example, if I'm traveling with my kid who's 13, who doesn't have the shot, does that mean I can't travel with him? I can't go on a trip because he can't get a shot. So therefore he has no passport. So, and then it gets complicated. So I think that, and once we have that sort of herd immunity through the vaccine, it really shouldn't be an issue anymore. And the fact that nobody's getting the flu right now. And so, like 0 cases of the regular flu happening out there anywhere. And so, we don't ask for passports for that. And lots of people, tens of thousands of people die every year of regular flu. And
they're not this year. Yay! What a happy note to end on.
Positive.
Say goodbye, George. We're out of time. That's it for UnSpun.
See you next week.
One.